Hi, welcome. I'm Brad Hurlock, host of the Garage Grit podcast, and today we are going to do another episode of our Origin and Impact series, but this time with Kelli Weatherby of Accurate Automotive in Mesa, Arizona, and I'm looking forward to, she's been on our podcast before. If you want to check out that episode, that was March of 2024, I believe, where we were talking about working on your shop and not in your shop. And just a quick teaser, she's going to be again on our podcast, panel podcast, talking about succession planning on August 20th. And so, but meanwhile, we're here today to talk about the her origin and impact story as far as in the auto repair space, and has it had an impact in her life and lessons learned. But first, Kelli, let's talk about your shop. Tell me about. Let's start by telling me the longest employee that you have there.
Okay, well, that's really great that you asked. You started out with a good one, because we have two gentlemen that have worked for us for 20 plus years. We've been in business, this is our 34th year. Lee and I did not buy a shop, we built a shop as a couple. We've been involved in it from together 50-50 the entire time. Of course, I was the mother. We have two children, and so I sort of walked that tightrope for a long little while. And anyway, the two gentlemen that have worked for us, one came to us as a 16-year-old, and he's going to be 40 this year. And the other one came to us in his early 20s, and he's having his 50th birthday. He's gone to Jamaica right now in a scuba trip for his 50th birthday. So
Okay.
they grew up with us, and we grew up with them, and we've had a lot of lessons learned along the way, so it's really been great. So we feel privileged to have them.
All right. Well, good. So talk to me about the rest of the staff. How many other people do you have on the team?
So currently we have four others. The two I talked about, one of them is our service manager now, so he's in the office, and the other one is our shop foreman diagnostician. So they are, Josh is our A-Tech. He technically turns wrenches, but mostly he diagnoses, and we dispatch to the other technicians, of which we have four right now.
Okay.
And we'll probably get into more of this later in the conversation, I anticipate, but we had two buildings, and we sold one as part of our retirement plan and succession planning, and now we're working out of one building. So we brought several lifts over. We lined it out so we have only 3 lifts less. So it's very strategic in our planning with the lift positioning. And so we have 4 technicians. And
You're going to have to go to double shift, 7 to 3 and 3 to 10.
well, if we get busier, we may have to do that. Or, whoever buys our shop can expand to whatever they want to do. But for right now, we are one building, and we are technically 5 technicians, a service advisor, myself, a finance officer, and a couple shuttle drivers. That's kind of our staff right now. That's how our model looks.
Right. And you didn't mention Lee in there as far as turning wrenches or being.
No, Lee does not turn wrenches and has not turned wrenches. He hasn't turned a wrench in 20 years.
Okay.
So
And so what is his role right now?
Well, we're also going to probably get into this, but a little teaser. He had a health incident. We'll call it an incident. And so he was gone from the shop for 8 months. And it was a heart issue, and he had a little bit tougher time than we anticipated to bounce back. So he was away from the shop for 8 months, doctor's orders. And so he's last September, he got the green light for physical activity and some work activity. And so we don't really, currently he's actually service advising a little bit, if I'm being completely transparent. But like this morning, he's not easing back into it. Anybody that's been in this business for any length of time or thinking about it, it comes with stress. And I mean, like with any job, right? But I mean, there's a lot of hats as a business owner, and or service advisor or any kind of leadership role comes with its pretty heavy dose of stress. So we don't count on him, but when he is here, he assists Eric, who is our service manager.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a good mini step towards the right process. It's not a full-time thing. It's just a little bit. Yeah, the health risk can weigh on us, and I think, especially in those who are, say, I don't know, maybe over 45, the expectation is you bottle it up, you just kind of keep going, right? And that may or may not doctors would not tell you that is the best way to handle it. So, and so, right. So that kind of builds up, and that's interesting because next Wednesday, and of course you might be listening to this, people who are listening might be listening to this at a different time. So just give you a point of reference. The June 18th podcast of 2025 is actually going to be about work-life balance for auto repair shops. So it's a timely conversation all over again. But I have, I get it. I mean, it's easy to just kind of like, okay, I'm just going to keep going and just keep doing and not think about it. And sometimes that weighs on you even more. So I'm glad to hear that he's kind of easing back into it, not rushing back in.
Yes, he would like to go in deep end, of course. He's a workhorse. He's only known how to work since he was 14. Neither Lee or I came from money, so we had to work hard for everything we've had. We don't feel entitled or think of it like that. We know everything we are hoping to acquire in this life is going to come at a price with hard work. And, so Lee only knows how to jump into the deep end and figure out how to swim. So easing him back into it and holding him back was a challenge in and of itself. But, we've already hit on things that are popping in my mind just about, easing back into it and how to take, the self-care and, just a lot of things that we've sort of hit on that are now like have my brain twisting because of this experience. I would highly recommend that self-care take a higher priority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And what that looks like is going to be different for every person too. So, but figuring out what that is, whether it's a hike or something else, right? Figuring that
exactly.
out and doing it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fun that he's back, or I don't know how much time he had with the customers before, but in this space, the relationship that you have with your customers is so important. That trust that you've built. Is he enjoying the time that he's spending with the customers, or is that not his personality type?
No, Lee is extroverted and gregarious. He absolutely, we used to tease that he used to just be here to hug the babies, and kiss, just be very warm and fuzzy. He's a very warm and fuzzy person, and that's the part I think he missed the most in being home. And the doctor told him originally post, quadruple bypass that, beyond just sitting on the couch and breathing, he wasn't to take on any stress level at all. And that is just not, it goes against every fiber of his being. So yes, Lee and I, we have a corny tagline, and it is friends serving friends, because that is the core of who we are. We built our business on friends. Lee was a dealership technician. And so if we wanted to open our business, we knew we would have to do a lot of side work and building our network of people. So our tagline has been and always will be friends serving friends, and that's really how we feel. We hope that that's how people feel when they come into our shop, is that they're welcomed like a friend, they're treated with respect like a friend. I have lots of girlfriends from high school, and I'm lots of years past high school. So Lee and I both, we invest in our relationships and our tribes, so to speak. So yes, that's what we do. Mostly we build relationships, and by the way, we fix cars. That's kind of how we look at it. We are a relationship building people. And then we would love to keep your car safe on the road with us and with other people to make sure everybody gets to their destinations well, out in without any incident.
I like that. I like that a lot. Can you give me a recent story, maybe, of like how that played out with someone in particular? You don't have to use actual names or their car names. We don't have to actually, call
Well,
out Bonnie or whoever.
no,
But
no, I would not do that. But I can tell you, um, there have been many times just since Lee and I've been back in the face of the business. So what's it been? September, October. So let's just say 6, 7 months that we've been back. We've been here, and we've had exposure with a lot of our customers in the last 6, 7 months. And we had neighbors that were regular customers, let's call it 2, 3 years ago, and we hadn't seen them. Obviously, it was past time that they would have had services done. So they've cheated on us. And Lee and I are like, well, and so I was home, and obviously they've been neighbors a long time. We have kids the same age. So one of their sons, who's now married, because to be transparent, our children are 39 and 37 now. And so he's in his mid 30s, he's married. He doesn't live at home anymore. He's on his own, making his own choices. He called me on my cell phone and he said, "Listen, my car's having trouble, and I was wondering if, we could just drop it at the house and you could drive it in." I'm like, "Yeah," because they're getting ready to go to the beach. And these are very close friends. We've traveled with them. It's not like all of our neighbors drop off their cars, but this family. Anyway, they are back. And I hope that his exposure, because I spoke to his mom last night. They're heading to the beach, and we do this whole key exchange when they go to the beach. And I said, "Hey, Dylan's got his car in the office, so we're super excited to see him," and all that. So I didn't lay it on too thick or make her feel too bad. But I wanted her to be sure and know that we had her son's car in. And oh, by the way, it'd be nice to see your car too. But that was one that just happened this week. So his car's here now. Um, and another experience is we have an older lady who has lost her husband within the last 5 years. And so she doesn't drive, near as many miles as she used to. And she calls us to pick up her car from her house because we offer a shuttle service. And for her, we pick up her car because she is, in her mid to late 80s. And we service it and bring it back to her at the end of the day. She's also lives within a mile of our house, so I just walk home. And so her daughter called, and she said, "Listen, my mom isn't doing great, so I'm here visiting her." And she mentioned that you might pick up her car, but I have my car here. Would you be willing to pick up my car? And I said, "Well, absolutely, we would. Why, it'd be our pleasure to help you that way." And so that was a really good, warm and fuzzy for Leah and I, that not only is she allowing and trusting us to pick up her car, but then she's mentioning to her daughter who's in town, who had said that she needed services while visiting her mom, and to get her home safe, right? Because she came from several hundred miles away. So that was a privilege. And I mean, if I sat here any longer, I could probably think of 4 or 5 more. But we have wonderful customers, loyal, they for the most part. But for whatever reason, buying and consuming has completely changed. Marketing has completely changed in the last decade. And so, it's an education piece. It's keeping top of mind. It's marketing differently. It's, wherever you are and however you are exposed in the community, to shout from the rooftop that you would love to be their service. Don't be ashamed to ask for business. A lot of people, I don't know why they would hide it under a bush, but I say shout it from the rooftop. We are in business. We are, reputable. We are whatever you are, whatever your branding, logo is. Stand on the tallest mountain, man, and shout it as fast and loud as you can, as often as you can. Is Leah and I, that's our thought process, and we need it more than ever because our car count is stable or down.
Okay. That's interesting. Why do you think your car count's down right now?
I think it's for a couple of reasons. And one of the things I think is because people are working hybrid. Either they're at home all the time or they're
Mm.
at office only a few days a week or a month.
Okay. Fewer
I
miles
think,
being driven.
what's that?
Fewer miles being driven.
Yes.
Yep.
And so it changes our education piece in that cars, whether they're driven or not driven, they're not that smart. They only know that the oil is, you know,
So many days
old
old. Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
broken down. And that
Right.
your rubber and your belts and your hoses, they're not smart either. And by the way, they're crusty and they are going to burst. When you go
Yeah.
and take a drive, that radiator fluid is not going to make it to your engine from the radiator with not good belt without hoses that are functioning.
So
So I
talk to me about Arizona. I've only been there once. I didn't really get exposed to whether or not cars are kept in climate controlled garages, but I can't imagine they are. And so it's hot in those garages, right? And even if it's sitting there, like that heat, that extra exposure is actually impacting the car.
we are considered an extreme weather state,
Right.
and extreme weather will beat up a car, whether it's being driven or not being driven. And I have, just in my mind recently, because Lee and I are really talking about car count a lot now that we're back in the shop, and who we haven't seen in a while, and who we aren't touching in the right way, or how we can touch how we can reach out to them. I'd say touch them, that sounds kind of creepy. How we can reach out to them, in a way that they want to be reached.
Yeah.
And
Right.
here's a news flash, Brad. My customers are not my age anymore.
Okay.
Some
That's
of
good.
them, I mean, some of them are obviously,
Right.
but most of them are a lot younger, and they
Right.
have a different mindset than I have.
Yes.
They, were raised in a different time, and they have
Yeah.
exposure to platforms that I was not privy to, and I've only had a small amount of time to get used to it and
Right.
educate myself and be aware and be savvy enough to know how to approach younger generation. And I have, like I said, mid to late 30-year-olds, and so I appreciate their opinion in how they want to be reached and how they want to consume and how they want to be, educated on the things that they need to do, because obviously they have, at least 2 cars in their garage. They're both married. No. We have a daughter and a son, and my son told my husband early on, meaning like his freshman or sophomore year of high school, I have no desire to work in the garage. Like they would work in the summers filing and, if they wanted to make money to go on a date. If they wanted to buy an expensive pair of jeans that I wouldn't buy, or for some reason they needed a little coin. And we appreciated the help, and we never ever made them feel obligated to be part of our dream. This is our dream, not their dream, and we always wanted them to pursue their own passion.
Right. Right. No, that's
So
great.
our daughter is she's a stay-at-home mom now, but she is in physical therapy, and our son is in finance.
Okay.
Yeah, far away
All
from
right.
the auto repair business.
So, as far as reaching them, have they given you ideas or tips as far as reaching people in their mid to late 30s?
Yeah, I think that there's suggestions, and also we have had a younger marketing person who puts content out on different platforms.
Mhm.
They feel like the frequency, I wasn't frequent enough or consistent enough. I think those
Yeah.
2 words are very important.
Very important.
Frequency and consistency and not all automotive repair. I mean, those
Oh my goodness, no.
that age group wants to know who you are and where you're coming from and how they're going to
That's
be.
correct.
They're even though I think people have lost awareness that they do want to be, they want to feel warm and fuzzy. They want, it's kind of like I explain to people, when you go to Nordstrom, you have a completely different feel than when you walk into Target. It's, if I'm consuming, I'm feeling completely different. If I buy an article of clothing from Nordstrom and when I buy an article of, and I'm not bashing either one, I buy from both. But
Okay.
I'm
I
saying
don't buy from either.
the the feel is different. The
Right.
training to um, an associate of Nordstrom is different than the training at Target.
Sure.
It's just
It's more concierge.
and neither one of them are better than the other. I'm just saying they're different. And so
Right.
when I'm talking to my children, they're like, we want to be valued. That's the key ticket. We
Mm-hmm.
want to know that we are valued as a
Mm-hmm.
consumer and not that you're just trying to get money out of my pocket.
Right. Right. Put more emphasis on the friends serving friends. And so I was glad to see
100%.
that on your homepage, right? But that's important.
100%.
And I often tell shops that, because obviously I've got a marketing background here as owner of AA Shop Marketing.
Right.
We often tell people that Facebook is social media, not business media.
That's right.
To kind of point out that you need to be a person first before you can be we fix cars. It's not the yellow pages. They're actually looking for a digital relationship of sorts to validate that they have trust in you. And that is how you're going to relay that trust, right? Is by actually being you and putting up video or putting up pictures of the people at the shop. And it can't just be all about cars and what you do. It needs, yeah. So a little bit of education, maybe 10%. And so if you're posting a good amount of content, as you should be, that's a lot of personal or human element aspect of communication. So that's great. It's great that you're headed that direction.
And I think that, because we were away, I'm going to call away for a little while, we are now getting into shallow end again because Leah and I, like I've said, we're hooked at the hip and we're 50-50. So,
Right.
we're getting back into recording next weekend with our younger marketing gal, doing some videos just like you said, Leah and I, and what we do and what we're about, and
Right.
in the shop with the guys at the bays. Hey, what'd you do Friday, Saturday, just trying to get them a bit more educated about who they're going to maybe see when they come into our shop.
No, okay, but hold on. You used the E word again. You're not trying to educate them. You're trying to expose them to who you are.
Yeah.
So make it authentic. Make it actually be about you and your husband and the people at the shop. It's not okay, here's what you can expect when you come in. It's just show them someone experiencing it potentially, as opposed to you walking them through it. Because again, you're trying to make them feel like they're just a part of it, as opposed to listening to a tutorial.
Yeah,
So-
I guess maybe I miscommunicated that. Like, the person would be here doing videos
Mhm.
with the people that work for us.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be an education piece. It's just going to
It's
be
not an automotive education piece. It's
Right,
more
right.
just their face in front of the video, in front of the camera, saying, "This is Josh. This is Brenton." Kind of just with
Yep.
with an experience to bring it more personal.
Yeah.
That's kind of
Yeah.
that's where we're heading we're heading back in that direction. We've
Good.
had those
Good.
experiences.
And I would just encourage you, when you do that, just have fun with it.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, Leah
it's
and I
not
like- Leah and I
crud,
like
the
it,
camera's
so-
on, right? No,
We like-
just have fun. Be yourselves. Just do your thing.
We,
And of course, if you're a curmudgeons, then you've got to fix that. But that's
we make we make it be very blooper friendly. Like, Lee and I are
Good.
we're just silly and like it to be that way.
It
We like to
good.
keep things, we like to have fun.
Right.
So,
Right.
I mean, we got to be at work. We might as well be having fun with the people that are here.
Yes.
We're with our work family a lot of hours a week, and
Yes.
we're trying to be back in back exposing our people again to what we are and where we've been and where we're going, and give them
Well,
some
talk to me real
direction, some
quick about
guidance.
the relationship that your team has with each other.
Well, this is a great question because we have the two that have been here a really long time, and then
Hmm.
Brenton is our next, really, he's, I'm going to call it B Tech, but for lack of a better term, he does everything except for diagnose, but he is starting to um, mentor with Josh in the diagnosis arena, and he's being very um, ballsy in learning. I would say that um, he's showing some enthusiasm to grow his capabilities, which we're loving. And we grew Brenton from a lube tech, and we're very proud of him. And he likes working here, and he says we know his folks, his parents pretty well, and that's kind of how his dad told him to come and put in an application because we told him we were hiring. So that's kind of how he came to us from some from his parents. Anyway, he's now taking on a nice leadership role in the other guys that haven't been here as long, and I am out in the shop just visiting with my guys. Lee calls it the walkabout mother hen. Here she comes. Take cover. She's going to ask you a personal question because I am very well known for peppering questions. Some welcome, some not so much, because I really want to know how they're doing. How their relationships are and how their children are, and it lends itself to my knowing how their mental state is and how solid they're feeling and how enthusiastic they are going to be about being at work. And it really fuels a lot of my fire to know my guys and have them know each other and help each other out. So we do have a huddle which tells us if anybody, what they have coming up, they might feel it be a challenge, and who they think they can go to if they have it. Listen, are you going to be okay with this? And if you're not, who do you think you could go to? Who's your first line of defense if you get into trouble? Because we don't want them to get hung up or frustrated. Nobody wants a frustrated technician. And so I feel like Brenton is really taking on that bit of an extra burden of, if you could call it a burden, of being a team leader. He's really embracing that. So he's embracing quite a few things right now. His further education to diagnose and his being a team leader. So that shows me he's got some great leadership qualities that I think he doesn't even realize he has, but he's just showing it. And so I try to do my best to make sure he knows that I see him. I acknowledge it. I give a compliment. I give an encouragement. Um, we were taught years and years ago in a class to maybe whatever it takes for you, if you're not if you're not person that gives out validation very easy, to put coins or rubber bands or something in the equivalent of 10. So you're giving 10 compliments a day, and every time you give a compliment or a validation, you're moving it to the other pocket. And when the pocket is empty and it's moved itself, you know that you have done your part as far as
Mm.
being a good leader. It's just another level of,
Hmm.
remembering that it's important as the leader to.
Right. Right. Now, do you have to move it back if you gave a critique as opposed to a compliment?
Well, that's something you could do. I
Okay.
think. Well, that would be a good thing for me to suggest to Lee, because
I can't go to bed yet. It's on the wrong
I
side. I got to
know
keep giving
I
out the
got to get back
compliments.
to work. Lee, my husband, is extremely validation dependent,
Okay.
but interestingly enough, he's not someone who easily gives out a compliment or a validation. Isn't that unusual?
I don't know. Maybe.
I think it's unusual.
Okay.
Let me point out that
Okay.
I have said to him that I think it's unusual. If that's something that you thrive on, then why wouldn't you think
Right.
other people would? But that's just me, probably being a
Yeah,
really
yeah,
critical
maybe.
wife or partner.
Maybe.
But and that's a downfall of maybe being a partner in the business.
Right? I mean, you're there
Yeah.
24/7,
I
or
mean,
you've got you're married 24, like it's there's a
you see all the
yeah.
good and all the bad and all the
Right,
things that
right,
you
20,
wish
yeah.
would
Yeah, yeah, that's,
change.
that's interesting. So
And
you were talking about the mother hen walking around,
yes, I do
and
my
I don't know if you
walkabout.
noticed that.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know if you noticed that my eyes went elsewhere, but it did because I did a quick search on Amazon for hidden pocket cameras. So you could potentially record
Oh, that would be
authentic
good.
moments.
Oh, I'm writing that down. Good one, Brad. Pocket camera. Do I have
Now,
to
of
tell
course,
him?
you got to be good about it.
Do I have to? Do I have to tell him I'm possibly recording?
Yeah, I'm not a
Maybe
lawyer. I don't know.
maybe I just say randomly. I may turn it on. So just so you know,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't. I don't know. I think
how
the
about I
the
just
answer would
record it and
be
I will ask permission later.
eh, before you publish it, if it
That's
is if
right.
it's publishable,
That's
right?
right. That's right.
Right. And
Uh,
listen, I record these every day, but I delete them every day. And I'm looking for gems that will actually
yeah.
promote the shop. And you gave me one. Thank you.
Right.
Can I publish this? Right. And
That
that
would
would
be.
make them feel a little bit better. But of course, they're going to be uneasy the next time you come around. But
They're all gonna. I mean, they already kind of look at me like, "Oh, here she comes." Um,
nice. Yep.
but I think that it's my way of showing them that I care
Hmm.
about them more than just because they work for me, but because I
Right.
really care for who they are and what's going on and where they're going and how I can help
Yeah.
them get there. You know,
Well, it sounds like they don't just work for you; they work with you.
because if they
Right.
don't get there, I don't get there.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
simple as that, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's not.
So
None of this is complicated.
well, but and yet none of it was obvious on day one when you started, right? And
No.
so there you were. Let's talk real quick about how you and Lee came to the idea that you would go start a shop from ground up. Why don't we let's roll the clock back and let's talk about were you drinking? Like, why would you come into that decision?
No, I'm gonna tell it to you. I'm gonna tell it to you straight, and this is the truth.
Go ahead.
There was absolutely no conversation.
Okay.
I told you that we have two children, but they were little, and in the summertime, my parents lived. So we live in what they would consider the East Valley of Arizona, so outside of Phoenix, obviously. My parents live 3 hours away in the mountains, and I know people think Arizona mountains. I don't know. There are mountains 3 hours away. They do get snow. There are two places to snow
North, right?
ski.
It's north. Yeah, you have to go north,
Yes.
right?
Yes, it's
Yeah. Okay.
north. It's northeast of where we live.
Mm-hmm.
My kids went there in the summer because obviously they were out of school. And instead of putting him, I mean, I would put him in some programs, but in order not to be worried about them or have my mind sidetracked, my mother and father were excellent grandparents. They were really great about having my kids go up there. And my kids loved to go up there because they would be spoiled rotten. They would drive my dad's ATV and completely tear up his yard, and my mom would bake all their favorite stuff so they would get anything they wanted, and they loved it. And it really helped Lee and I out. But anyway, so it was July, early 90s. I had gone up to visit the kids because they'd been up there already for a month because they get out of school here in May because it's so blazing hot. So I went up for a visit and I called Lee. It was a Friday. And he called my parents' house actually because I didn't call Lee at work very much. With technicians, it's not a good idea to interrupt their day. So he was a technician at a Honda dealer. He was a Honda Master Tech. So in the valley, I won't mention which one, but anyway, not that it would matter. But he was a lead tech, Master Tech, and he called me Friday, and it was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I thought, oh man, something must be because my mom's like, hey, Lee's on the phone, and I'm like, all of it, my heart's pumping. He's not calling me at 2 o'clock if it's busy and everything's okay. So I answered the phone, and I'm like, what's wrong? He goes, nothing's wrong. And my husband, you have to understand, is, like I said, very extroverted and very gregarious. Nothing, and super positive. Nothing's wrong, babe. I quit. We're going to open our own shop. What? Well, how far are you into this plan? Oh, I left the I'm not at the dealer right now. Cool. Where are you? So he had made a friend several years prior to this who had worked at the Toyota dealership next door, had opened his own shop. And he had become, busy. And Lee says, I'm going to work for Brian when he has overflow, and we're going to work on the people that have used us in the last couple of years. Because any good technician has side work. Don't Any shop owner needs to not tease themselves. Their people have side work if they're good. And so we had side work, and so here we go, friends serving friends. So we put the word out. We're on our own, and this dates us. We're on a pager, and people would page us, and then we would
Yes.
line the work out, and they would drop
Okay.
it off at our house, and then I would
Okay.
take it to Lee. We're at Brian's shop, and then he would work on Brian's overflow, and he'd work on our work, and then he would
So
come
he
home.
basically was renting a bay in
He was
Brian's
renting a
shop.
bay. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And we never paid any money for that rent because he would take it out in trade in the work that he helped Brian with his overflow.
Okay.
So this is baby step into a business.
Right. Right.
We
Yes.
baby stepped our way to a business. And so we
Okay.
did that for a couple years.
And were
And
you already a full-time mom at that point, or were you
yeah,
also employed? Okay.
no. I was stay-at-home mom. That's what freaked me
Okay.
out. I was like, holy smokes.
Right. Right.
Um, so we did that, and we grew our shop. We leased a place. I'll never forget the first place we leased. I was like, oh my gosh, we're never going to be able to pay the rent. We don't have enough business. And we grew exponentially there. I mean,
Yeah.
it was like wildfire. We
Right.
had just spread our wings. And man, by now, Lee's like, Kelly, I got to have you come and work. I mean, like at the office, not like do paperwork at home, but I need you to come and answer phones because I can't answer the phone, order parts, to, deal with customers. I mean, I can't do it all. I'm like, okay, so that's when I
And at this
really,
point, it was still just him, right? It wasn't like there was employees.
no,
You
we
were the
just,
first
it was
employee.
just him. He was the
Yeah.
technician, and I
Mm-hmm.
came from being a stay-at-home mom to now I'm a business owner with my husband,
Mm-hmm.
mother of two.
Okay.
So when we opened the shop, the kids were like elementary school.
Okay.
Yeah. And so there we were. We leased our first shop, and we grew great. And it just
Now, I'm sorry, real quick, I want to jump in though. What was your background in the automotive space?
I went to school for special education.
Okay. And so when you started answering phones,
Yeah.
what was that like? I mean, you didn't know cars the way your husband knew cars. People were asking questions. How
But
long is this going to take?
but
What's this going to
remember,
cost?
most of these people were friends of ours. So they'd be like, "Hey, Kelly, I got to schedule a car." Okay, cool. Or, "Hey, I got referred from your friend XYZ." And I'd be like, "Awesome. We can't wait to, help you out with your car. It'd be our privilege to help you out," kind of thing. And so because it kind of started with that, and then it just kind of blew from there. Then we got our sea legs under us. We had one technician, and this is a really great story. I'll make it super quick. Our very first technician we hired, his name was Eric Louderback. Our service manager's name is Eric Wayne Louderback. It's a son to the first employee we ever had. So Eric came to work. Eric came to work for us he wasn't quite 16. He cleaned toilets and pushed brooms and stayed out of trouble. His dad was worried about him. He was hanging out with a kind of a rough crowd. He just wanted to keep Eric. I call him Eric Wayne because, of course, Eric worked for us. He wanted to keep Eric Wayne out of trouble. He wanted to see that his son made it to adulthood, basically. And so, just hanging out with a rough crowd. And So his father thought, I don't know the kids he was hanging out with, but his father was concerned. And we were I'm like, if I don't have to push a broom or wash a toilet, excellent. Come on down. So Eric Wayne came to work for us that way. His dad was our first technician. He was our first employee. So it was super cool. Yeah. So that's how we started, just like that. And we had Eric as our first guy, and then we hired another one, and and then we bought our first building. We moved into this building in December 1999, and then we bought that expansion building in '06, which we sold last year.
Right.
So we had
That you're going to buy again next year. You're going to buy it back.
I'm going to buy it back.
Right.
I'm
Remember
gonna
when I
let,
sold that to you? I was just kidding. You can return it. It's fine. Okay, so when did you go from? So I'm picturing '99. I'm picturing you're writing out paper slips for each
yeah.
of the orders. When did you go to digital? Because I'm certain that you're not writing paper slips anymore.
we've been doing DVIs, digital vehicle inspections, for 15 years.
Okay.
I'm gonna give a shameless plug. Hopefully, I won't get in trouble. But
No,
Lee and I have been involved in ATI, and
Go ahead.
and we take a lot of our what we are. A lot of it is because we've been trained really well by not only the ATI coaches, because with ATI you have a weekly phone call with a coach, but also the people you're able to rub shoulders with in a 20 group. And if you're a business owner and you do not have any kind of person that is your coach or consultant or something, I would highly recommend it. You just have to be willing to acknowledge that you aren't going to take your shop where you want it to go, probably without help.
Yeah, that's
So-
interesting. And actually, interestingly enough, the last panel conversation that we had, so the episode from May 2025 was about, should I get a coach, yes or no? And
100%.
so that came up, and that was actually the consensus right there. By the way, was from the group was,
Drink the
and not
Kool-Aid.
everybody on the panel, not everybody on the panel was currently enrolled in a coaching group, and yet the consensus still was, yes. You need a coach to get you through, at the very least, certain segments or steps or phases of your business, right? To
Well,
dial
that's
it
how we
in.
were introduced to the realistic possibility of going digital, bringing our shop into a more modern age with a computer, invoicing, not having to handwrite them out. Oh my gosh, the tediousness of the handwriting of the tickets would take Lee. If we had 5 or 6 customers, I mean, it would take him a long time, because he's long-winded, and he translates the long-windedness to the long story on the ticket. I'm like, oh my word. But anyway, so we are digital. We have been for 15 years, I want to say. I mean, a long time, well before most shops were doing it. And I was inquiring to one of the coaches that I respect what the percentage of shops in the U.S. don't do a digital inspection, and he, I don't know where he came up with the percentage, and I don't know how close it is to reality, but it's still pretty high of the shops that are not giving their customers a digital vehicle inspection with pictures.
Well, and I would guess, and I don't know this for certain, but I would guess that if you're looking at all the shops in the U.S.,
yeah,
the smaller shops, the single proprietors, or the 3-person shops, are probably have a higher rate of paper. Ironically, because they would actually do better because they're so low staffed.
I'm thinking,
right?
Why?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, because they don't believe that they probably it's. Don't we all have things that we think are correct in our own mind, and it's often blocking us, which is the benefit of having an outside resource like a coach or a 20 group to kind of set our eyes straight and get the blinders off. But, they might have in their minds that they can't afford
Right.
that investment, or
Right.
or they can't see beyond the actual price tag of the investment. And same goes true with marketing,
because they
right?
don't see the value. If they saw the
I had
value, they would do it
right,
in a heartbeat. But
right.
on the other hand, there are things that a 20 group has been telling Lee and I that we need to do that we just, for whatever reason, cannot pull the trigger and haven't pulled the trigger on a few things. And we're like, oh my gosh, how many times are they going to tell us this? And we're like, and then we'll laugh. It's like, well, they're still telling us.
Are you
Are you listening?
I don't want to pry. Are you allowed to share one? Are you allowed to share an example? Will I get you in too much trouble
Well,
to share an example?
I'll share. It has a lot to do with releasing people down into the workspace from our shop. We keep people, we're very loyal. And so, we'll go into a 20 group meeting and we talk about, how our shop's doing and kind of just give a really quick synopsis of what we've been doing since we met last. And a lot of times, and we're not the only shop, but the shops will go around and complain about, XYZ on such an employee, right? On a service manager or a lube tech or a tech or something that drives us crazy about that person. If they could just do it right, they haven't learned how to do it right yet. And so then you have to sort of say, well, is it a leadership deficiency? Yes, probably. How long do you stay loyal to those people and try and grow them? How long do you put up? I mean, I'm trying to think how they say it. What you put up with is what will stay, or so. In other words, when you're not willing to change, it won't change.
Manifests itself, right?
That's what
it actually gets worse and just won't change. It actually manifests.
They become more and more loose.
Yeah.
Accountability is a big word for Lee and I with making changes after we make a statement. Then we say what we feel is the right thing to do or what we're going to do. And then we get home and we're like feeling bad because we're so loyal to that person or just people in general. We want people to be loyal to our shop. So we be loyal to our team, At a fault, it's like, oh my goodness. So I would say that if I was going to say one of the big things that Lee and I have a hard time changing is our team players, because we feel a loyalty because we know they have families who count on us for their paycheck.
So, and I don't know this to be the case, but I was talking to a shop owner in, I want to say Connecticut, and he was telling me a story about how he was in a growth period, and he was kind of leaning heavily on this one employee in particular, but he knew that this employee was not going to be a lifer for him. He had other dreams and other aspirations,
right?
And he ended up, and he needed to get past that to really grow, right? He needed to find people who were going to be with him for the next 5 or 6 years. Right. That was kind of his goal. That was his mindset. And so instead of just saying, go find your own dreams, he actually learned from what those dreams were, and then he helped get that person employed somewhere else.
Oh, there you go.
And
it eased his burden of the release into the work fair. Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. So that's my question to you is, if you think about a particular person, please don't name the name, but if you think about a particular person at your shop, would they be better suited at this particular location, vocation, and do you have a connection in the community that you might be able to make an introduction? And because that one activity that's driving you nuts might not apply
over
in this
place.
role over here, right?
Well, and they certainly wouldn't start out with that behavior.
Well, that's also the case, right?
They've gone to
so
that
if it's
behavior.
a behavioral thing as opposed,
we've allowed it. We haven't done it. It's kind, and what Lee and I, because we are married and we go home to each other at night, we have it. We have had, and I'll get into this other thing another time, maybe with you, but because you have to draw a line. We now have drawn a line. There's a hard stop time now, whereas it used to be like all night long until we went to bed. Not every day, but it could go into when we went to bed. and that
Yeah.
wasn't healthy for our relationship. So we now
No,
have a
or
hard
his heart.
we have a
But
hard
anyway,
line. Yeah.
good.
So we would be talking, let's just say we would be talking in private, whether it was at home or here or after, whatever. We were
Yeah.
alone and we could speak openly about what's going on. And we would say, we parented our children differently than we're parenting this person. We're not doing him any favors. Some
Right.
parents, give to their kids until they don't realize that they have to work hard for things. And so why would we not do that to our employees?
Mm-hmm.
Why would we parent? We're not different people. We parented him different. I call it
Yeah.
parenting because that's basically what we're doing.
Well, you did refer
We're
to yourself
giving
as
him
Mama
life
Hen.
skills. Why would we give
Yes.
him different life skills than we gave our own kids? It's silly. So
Right.
yes, I would
Right.
say that that's a really good suggestion, is to, when you have a fork in the road and you need to part ways, if you can find the person gainful employment somewhere else where they would have a paycheck until they could find, maybe find something different.
Mm-hmm.
What we have done in days gone by is find something in our shop that they can do better. Like, where would they flourish in our shop? Maybe it's not
Mm-hmm.
the current role, but there could be a role for them
That's a good
here.
point.
And so we
Yes.
have, until we can teach them, and not to say that they couldn't go back to the role they had, and we leave that open for them, but we find
Right.
a role for them, a different role
Right.
within our team, if we can. Because like I
Of
said,
course.
our loyalty waters run deep. And I'm proud of that, but it has bit us in the hind end a few times.
So, in the last panel podcast, one of the topics that ended up coming up as far as reasons to have a coach was emotional discounting, and how you don't charge the rate that you should be charging because they are a friend, and you are friends serving friends. And so I'm guessing in the early days of the business, you were undercharging for services. And why don't you talk a little bit
Or
about
not
how?
charging.
Oh, geez. All right. So talk to me a little bit about how that evolved. How that has evolved. Go ahead.
Well, this plays into why you need a 20 group in the best way, because
Mm,
um, my my husband is a very, very loving person. He loves people. He loves being around people. He loves serving people. Um, and so, because he felt, I guess, instead of beating the dead horse, I'm going to say he didn't acknowledge his value in his experience. And so he would, um, I'm going to do, like they would come in, let's say for a clutch, and he would do something else that he saw. But when they picked up, and I knew the parts he purchased, so I'm like, and this was when he's handwriting. I'm like, babe, I don't see anything on the ticket for those parts you purchased. Was it for that car? I'm assuming it was for that car. I don't want to come off like I gotta go into the soft shoe a little bit instead of calling him completely on the carpet. So he would have to sort of fess up. And I'm like, babe, you got to charge for your expertise. You are a technician. They wouldn't
yeah.
be able to fix this car on their own. They're going to pay someone. They are going to pay someone. Let it be you, because you will charge them fairly, but you need to charge them.
Right. You can't charge them unfairly. You can't be unfair to yourself.
Not only that, they know what it's worth because mostly they've shopped it around, or they have an idea in their head what it's going to be. And then when you
Yeah.
undercharge, you're discounting your value. Like, then why would they respect you? I had to kind of put
Yeah.
it on that. They will respect
Hmm.
you when you charge that you're available to help them. You're going to give them a good value, and you're going to charge them accordingly, and they're going to give you payment. Because
Right.
now
Right.
we're not working on the side out of the driveway. We have a brick and mortar. So you have to
Mm-hmm.
say, if you want us to be available for your repairs in the future, we're going to
Mm-hmm.
have to charge you for the repair. Nobody's expecting you to do it for free. Honestly, they're not. So
Right. They're
I
not.
would have
No,
to
I agree.
I would have to tough love him a little bit, Brad, to be honest. But he finally
Okay.
came
That's how you
around.
overcame it.
That's how we
So
overcame
you
it.
didn't
I
have an
had
issue.
to.
You were not one of the emotional discounters. It was him. Even if it was one of your
Well,
girlfriends from high school.
yep.
Okay.
Because guess
Good.
what? I know my husband is giving them a good value. I can go to the grocery store and see my friend. I can look her in the
There it
eye
is.
and know that my husband did not cheat her. He did not put parts on her
Right.
car that she didn't need. He didn't, you know, put extra groceries in our bucket because she can't have any. It's not like that.
Yep.
It's a fair win-win. You give a great service for a good value.
Good. Good. I
Yeah.
like that. And that's actually how you have to look at it when it comes to that. Okay.
Because like I said, they're going
All
to pay
right.
somebody. That
All
car's
right.
not
I
going to
want to
fix
just.
itself.
How many years was it before you felt like you actually, like when you first started, you probably felt like, okay, I don't really know anything here. I better hurry up, get caught up. How long did it take for you to have the appropriate level of confidence in yourself in calling him out on the carpet for not mentioning that part? Like you actually had to have a
Well,
knowledge base to be able to recognize that.
there comes the 20 group because what I would do is I would contact, like, if Lee and I were in a power struggle, let's call it, because I had an opinion and he had a differing opinion, I would call somebody that I'm close with in the 20 group.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just want to compliment you because you could have said I had an opinion and he had a wrong opinion, but you didn't. You just said different. That was very nice. That was.
We had a different, we have a
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
different. Well, so I'd call the person that I knew in the 20 group who you know, I used a couple of the guys pretty frequently and they would answer, Kelly, what did Lee do now? And I said, well, I need you to help me when we're together next, you know, with XYZ. And then and sometimes it was because I had an idea of something I wanted to implement in the shop and he would discount me. And so I would use those
Okay.
people. So sometimes it was for various reasons.
Okay.
Like it was
Okay.
knowing the value. It was sticking to your guns when it comes to getting paid and
Right.
not letting cars go without payment. It was let's do
Mm-hmm.
XYZ in marketing. It's going to cost this much money, but he doesn't want to. And I think it's a good idea and he's discounting me. It was a lot of
Mm-hmm.
different things. I used these people
Right.
in a lot of different ways. And I shouldn't say they used me too. Let's make no mistake about it.
No, no.
Um,
I caught on to that. That's just fine.
it was a
But they
it was a
helped you with
win-win.
that. Yeah,
Yes.
but they helped you with that knowledge deficit in the early days.
But
So,
here's the key ticket to that though, Brad, is
yeah.
when I would say, "What do you think about this idea?" and the person that I was you know, using as my confidant would say, "I think that's a great idea. We're going to do that in our shop. I'm going to tell Ruth to do that in our shop." Then I had to have the wherewithal to keep my mouth shut because when this person told Lee, "Hey, I'm thinking this is what
Yes.
Ruthie's going to start at the shop," and Lee would be like, "Oh man, that's a great idea." What could I not do? I couldn't
Right.
say that I was the person that
Yes, that's
came up
correct.
with the
That's
idea.
correct. And so,
I'm just like, no
and I'll give
way,
you an
Lee.
example.
That's awesome. When can we start that?
I love that. I love that.
I'm
As
giving away
early on
secrets.
in No, it's fine. It's good. It's good. Early on in my marriage, I actually wanted to relay an idea to my wife, Cindy, and I knew that it was going to just be, it wasn't going to be
fight.
heard. So I had my niece. So I had my niece log into my mother-in-law's email and send Cindy an email
There
with
you
the
go.
idea. I
That's
got caught. Okay.
Oh
But
no.
it would have worked. It would have.
Well,
It was gonna work. So
Lee,
anyway.
Lee never admitted that he knew that I talked to them. It's a secret.
Okay.
This is
All
a
right,
long
good.
secret.
All right. Well, don't tell him about the Garage Grit podcast because he might start listening.
No, he wouldn't care now. He
Of course,
honestly
we could
wouldn't
possibly edit that out if you really needed me to.
No, he would not care.
Okay,
If I really thought I was going to get in trouble, I would probably not share.
good.
But I mean,
Sending me a text
maybe I
message.
still
Delete,
would. I don't
delete.
know. No, it's a
Nice.
great.
Nice.
It was a great learning experience for me to know that I wasn't in the
Mhm.
boat alone. That
Mm.
the 20 group was really in it with us. We had, you
Hmm.
know, we had 20 shops, and a lot of those shops had wives that were also involved. So up to, we were a boat of 40, 35 to 40 strong. And that's a big boat.
Right.
That's a nice well to dig into.
Sure. Sure. That's very interesting. You talked about the investment. We talked about the investment of the DVIs, and you even mentioned in passing about investing in marketing,
Yeah.
and how people are like, they look at it and they're like, no, no, no. I had one small shop several years ago come to me, and it was he didn't want to be just him at the shop. He wanted to bring on his business partner full time, and he wanted to bring on other employees, and he knew he needed to grow. And he
Hmm.
told me his annual revenue, and I said, you're too small for us. Like, you're not going to want to pay our smallest package for our marketing services.
Right.
And so I told him the price of the marketing services, and he paid it. And it was difficult for him for the next 6 months,
Yep.
because it's not a light switch. It's not an instant when it
He's
comes
not going
to
to put his
digital
name on the
marketing.
bottom line and all of a sudden people are going to come in. It's not going to
Right.
happen.
That's right.
Yeah.
Um,
You got to have faith.
but after about 9 months, he says, "Okay, now I get it." And he was able to bring on his business partner after that first year,
Yeah.
and and then he grew his shop to well over a million, and it started out
That's
much
exciting.
much smaller,
Yeah.
and so uh, sometimes it makes sense to make the investment, or maybe not always, and it is about the right investment, right? And so
Right.
that's where that accountability group can kind of make sure that you're headed the right direction
Right.
on things.
Don't pull the
So that's
trigger
nice.
too terribly early, but absolutely don't lay back when it's gas. When it's time to hit that gas, go,
Yeah.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that most people that are in business, I say most because I haven't met any, but I'm sure there are, business owners are a little nuts. You have to be a little bit like, what's the worst case scenario and what are they going to come and get if the whole thing falls apart? And you have to be willing to risk it. There's risk involved. It's not a
Yep.
guarantee. I mean, listen, we're 34 years into a business and we have taken lots of steps back. And we can talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that today or another day. But, because we thought we were in the succession portion of it, I mean, I'm going to completely be transparent. I'm going to be 64 next month.
Okay.
He's a couple years younger than me. He's 62. And he's just had this coming off this health journey.
Right.
So
Right.
we're closer. We're breathing down the neck of retirement. And
Yeah.
we came back into our shop after 8 months being gone. I mean, I was of course back and forth, but
Well,
I
let's go back a little bit before that, because not
yeah.
everybody knows the full story. So, how many years ago did you start planning for succession?
Oh my goodness.
How many years?
Let's see. Like 8.
Okay. And so, about as of 3 years ago, or as of 2 years ago, you were still on that succession plan,
Yep. So let's
and
call it,
it.
like, what's that, 5.5, 6 years that we
Mm-hmm.
were kind of baby stepping, talking to
Mm-hmm.
people who had transitioned, talking about what kind of, I mean, this is a long journey. And this is the word
Yes.
I'm going to get out. Here's a newsflash, PSA, hold your hat. It's a long journey. It's not one day
Yeah.
you're going to wake up and go, I want to be done, and it's going to be done. If you do it in a way that you're going to get the best bang for your buck, if you want to get what you have coming for the time invested, you're going to be a long journey for this. Because what we didn't know was that, and I'll go really quick. We needed our standard operating procedures in a manual for every person in the shop, including Lee and I.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yes.
when we are gone, then a service manager is now going to be, this was how we thought it was going to happen. The service manager was going to become a co-owner with Josh. That was our plan.
Okay.
So our service manager position would be open. So everybody would move up. So you're always building up.
Mm-hmm.
So we needed our standard operating procedures first and foremost in a manual so people could read. We needed an organization chart again, for as people are moving around in your organization, you plug in names and see where your open positions are. So you're investing in the open positions and making the best decision for your team. So we
Mm-hmm.
needed an organization chart. We needed to have certain attorneys and accountants and our our living trust in all the legal aspects of it dialed in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We needed a business broker if you're going to go that way, or if in our case we thought we had two internals, but you would need a
Yeah.
business broker if you're going to have it sold outside of your
Sure. Sure.
So I'm saying maybe your head is already spinning if you're a shop owner thinking you're going to succeed tomorrow in selling your business.
Right.
It takes some planning, it takes some things in place, it takes some education on. For Leah and I, it was an eye-opening experience.
Yeah.
Lots of conversations. It's a long haul.
Okay. And it didn't work out.
It didn't work out.
You're back. Okay.
We're back.
You didn't. All right. So you were saying. I think you were saying that the possible new owners, it just didn't work. They weren't able to pull together.
Yeah.
Financing. Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah.
Okay.
They weren't in a place where they could come up with the cash funds.
Yeah.
Um,
And so,
and so then we.
and listen, again, I don't want to be too personal. You didn't mention the person's name, and so
No.
you mentioned earlier that business ownership is a risk.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
I grew up. My dad owned his business. My mom owned her own business. All of my aunts and uncles definitely my uncles, but possibly several of my aunts, now that I think about it, also owned their own independent businesses, right?
Right.
And
You saw them go through the ups and downs.
yeah, I did. I absolutely did. I didn't register what it was looking back when I was in my 20s, I was like, oh, that's what that was, right? Like I didn't register it as a kid.
Right.
But because it was just life, right? But
That's right.
but,
It was what you knew, and it didn't seem unusual
Yeah.
because most of the people you knew were doing it.
right.
But
And if you come from a
I
different
was
background,
raised.
right? So again, I'll reference my own experiences. My wife's family, like for the most part, they've worked for large companies or the government, right? I mean, that's a whole different mindset. That's a whole different. There's no risk.
It's a completely
It's a
different
different
beast.
type of risk
Yes.
because you have like you're never going to fire yourself potentially, but
No.
but it's so you don't have to worry about that. But there's plenty of other things. The
Right.
risk is higher, definitely as an owner operator. And so so making sure that the spouses are on board is also part of that experiment.
It 100% is, and we would not. It's not like we would strong arm this person into, or try to persuade them in any way,
Yeah.
shape, or form to do something that would be catastrophic to their family life.
Yeah.
That is not who Lee and I are.
Right. It goes
That
against
is-
the serving.
And,
Right.
and I'm telling you that both of these people are still in our business. They still work for us. There's no animosity.
Right.
It's not like we have.
Right.
It's just now we know where we're at. Now we know what we're doing. Now we know where we're going.
Yep.
And if you're still on board, here we go.
Yep, and I'll tell you this, by
Because-
the way. You mentioned earlier about succession planning and having writing everything down. And when we talk about succession planning on August 20th, I'm going to talk a little bit about this. But who reads anymore?
Right.
Get ready for the video version of it. Just pointing that out. So
Well, several of the people in our 20 group have gone digital 100%. Like
Okay.
they don't even whip out any papers on the onboarding.
Right.
It's all just go home and read whatever you feel like reading.
right,
But we're gonna hold you to what's in the paperwork.
yeah,
You're gonna be on the hook for what's in the paperwork. You can choose to read it or not.
yeah,
Sign it or don't. You won't be an employee unless you sign it. You know what I mean?
right.
So, I agree. It's going that way.
Yeah.
I mean, our manuals now are archaic. Like they're, I mean, we're again now, if when we go to the next stage,
Well,
we're going to have to do it again
yeah,
probably.
well, actually, there are ways using AI and other readers or even voice actors who can just read those manuals to make it
Yeah,
a video, and then you can
there you go.
actually insert, screenshots of examples while they're talking about different things. There's ways around
Yeah,
it so you don't have to start all over unless the operations have changed. Um,
yeah. The work has been done. It just will be in a different format.
yeah, well, that's what I'm
So
saying. It'll be like
it'll
converting
be a lot
VHS
less.
to a thumb
It'll
drive.
be a lot less time invested the next time we go around. We've done the initial.
That's right.
Um, yeah.
Okay.
So it's all good.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad you were able to jump back on.
Yes, this is great.
I don't know how much more time we have. I don't know if we're up against the clock at all. I know that it's a little longer than
It's
we had hoped.
I've got a few
Oh,
more.
good.
I've got like 15 minutes
Oh,
more.
that's perfect. All right,
It's
good.
kind of a hard stop in about 15 minutes. We're
All
good.
right, that's great. All right, so I'm
Yeah.
just thinking through and thinking about the lessons learned along the way, and we just talked
Hmm.
about the spouse being a part of the business, but also understanding the risk,
Hmm.
or I kind of want to know the conversation that you had with your parents at 2:30 when Lee hung up the phone that Friday afternoon.
Well, let me tell you, this face shows all the emotion. I was scared.
Sure.
Um, I was irritated that there wasn't any conversation.
Okay. Yeah.
I was irritated that a large decision had been made without my input.
Yeah.
That I was. After that, though, I understood because when a man's not happy at work, he's not happy.
Yeah.
And they say the woman in the house really controls the temperature. And I do believe that's true because we are the ones that are typically home more and the nurturing part of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I was a little irritated, I
Mm-hmm.
would say, if I'm being honest.
Sure.
Um, I was excited also, which seems a little bit unusual, but Lee and I embrace change really well, which is another kind of unusual part of our relationship. It might be well. This is it in a nutshell. Lee is crazy, and I'm crazy enough to go along with it. How about that? I mean, I've said that more than a dozen times. It just rolls off the tongue.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I am good with spontaneity. I'm good with change. I I don't know. Maybe if I was in a different era, I would have been a firefighter. I would run to the danger. You know, I would run to the danger. It's
Right.
crazy.
Right.
I don't retreat.
Yeah.
It's not in my nature. Part of my father was a military. He was a World War II fighter bomber.
Okay.
So I was raised in, and my mother was a pull your bootstraps up sister and get with it. Like she was no nonsense.
Right.
Do not cry. Whatever you do,
Mm.
you are not allowed. So those are the kinds of backgrounds that I came from. Very tough. And I have only brothers. And I was not treated like the princess, let me tell you. If we went hunting and I shot a bird, they're not cleaning my bird for me. You
Okay.
know, if I fished and I got a fish, I was cleaning the fish. I mean, I was just another person in our group. And, you know, it made me tough and it made me, you know, who I am.
Right.
As much as Lee would like me to be a little softer around the edges sometimes, I'm sure, um, I wasn't built that way.
Okay.
I'm more like a dude in the way I think, in the way that I approach hard things. I'm like, go at it.
Okay.
Let's get it
All
done.
right.
Like,
So there was a moment of
let's not,
fear when you first heard the news, or concern, or what is this
yeah,
crazy guy saying? And then you took a breath and you said, let's get it done.
yeah,
All right. Good.
absolutely.
Good.
Let's build this thing. Let's see where we can go. This is going to be fun. I mean, we have I mean, I would put my husband as a workhorse against anyone, and I am talking anyone.
Nice.
He likes to work hard. He doesn't, when he's tired, he just keeps working.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of expects the same thing out of all of us, but both of our children too. Because there would be times when we'd be just dog tired, and he'd be like, "We're not done yet," you know. And he's the kind of person that is meticulous. He's thorough. You know, when we go camping, our tent went back in the original box, if you can believe it.
I'm sorry, say that again?
He would, if we went camping, the thing that my kids hated the worst is going camping because our tent went back in the original purchase box. It was rolled so tight that it fit in the original
I like him.
box.
He's good. I like him. He's good
Oh
people.
my gosh. So here's another secret. For Father's Day, I got a canvas bag that fit our tent.
Nice. And oversized, so
And
it's
the
easy to
kids
put
were
in.
like,
Nice.
Yes.
Yes. So, I actually
So we
had.
just-
You ready for I actually
The
had.
fear was,
You know those bag chairs, the camping chairs. Those
Oh,
bags
yeah.
are also kind of tight, right? So I actually had an
they-
oversized one for mine. Yep.
no, ours go in the original bags. Are you kidding me? That's like no problem. I can do that with my eyes closed. It's that stupid tent box that
tent's
was
tough.
the bane of my existence.
Tent, the sleeping bag.
I
those are
think
tough.
if you said, let's go camping, my kids would like go into a, you know, they're like, not the tent. But I think when you say, and I was fearful, and when you repeat it back to me, I was fearful for the, mostly for my kids, for the nest egg, for the house that we lived in, for the lifestyle that we built.
Mm-hmm.
Because my husband was a good technician. He made good money.
Mm-hmm.
There's good money in being a technician.
Right.
There goes our vacations.
For a
There
little
goes
bit.
our regular, you know, even though we were on commission, he made good money. So we were able to support our, you know, we've never lived extravagantly, but we live comfortable and
Sure.
we have a nice house. And I was worried and scared, you know.
Yeah.
It's not like we had a bunch of money stockpiled anywhere.
But you turned it
So,
around and you jumped
Yeah.
in. You were excited about it, and
Yeah.
and I'm just thinking about
Thankfully for Brian Roy and let us, you know, lease his spot.
right.
Yes, I when I see him, I thank him all the time.
Now,
Brian, you
does
were
he still have a
our
shop?
starting- He does, and he's a one-man guy.
Okay.
He doesn't want to grow. He works in the same old place, and it is 100% beaten down.
Mm.
I haven't been by in a couple of years, but the last time I went by, he was still there. I was like, wow, okay.
Okay.
You know, and that's okay. If you start your business and you don't have any
Mhm.
aspirations of building it into a multiple, you know, $1 million shop or a multiple location shop, or, you
Right.
know, work with what works for you.
You got
know?
to figure out your goals and what works
Yeah.
for you, and align those two, and go from there. I 100%
Yeah.
agree. And so he probably doesn't do a lot of marketing, and that's fine. 'Cause that's
No.
not a fit for him, because that's not marketing would help him grow, and he's not trying to grow, right? So, I completely understand that. Yeah. So,
He would prefer to just, he is about Lee and I's age. I mean, he may not be in business currently as I'm speaking to you.
well, now we
because I
got to go
haven't
figure that
spoken
out.
I know, right? But I am grateful for him. I have a very soft spot in my heart for him. I know that he helped us when we needed it.
Yeah.
And because we have this loyalty thread in our fabric, I don't forget where we came from.
Right.
We came from that old shop with no AC and no lifts. I mean, Lee worked with no lifts for 2 years.
Plenty of lifts
He did
now.
not like.
Not even
Well,
a space
we
to
have
put them.
We have lifts.
You have plenty
We've
of
always
lifts
had
now,
lifts.
right? But
Brian's shop did not have a lift.
right, no, I get
They
that.
worked on
Yes,
the-
now you have
yeah.
plenty of lifts, and you actually don't even have the space to put them. Is what I'm saying. You need more floor space. So
We had to sell two when we consolidated. Yeah.
right, see, okay, yeah, that's what I was talking about. All right.
Yeah.
Well, that was a great sentiment for. And I don't know if Brian will. It was Brian, right? That was.
Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brian.
I don't know
Roy.
that he'll listen to this show, but maybe he will. And
I don't know. Shout out to him. I mean, there's been a lot of people along our way that have really held our hand. And it's been really nice.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm certain that you've held the hands of others. In
You know, I give back when I can.
Good.
I mean, it really makes me teary. I'm kind of teary right now. Not to be.
That's
Not
okay.
to. I'm very transparent. I'm teary because I just have a lot of love in my heart for those people that were willing to take us on.
good.
You know, because we were knuckleheads. You know, we made a lot of decisions that probably weren't great.
Well, that's part of the journey. That's how that goes. So I'm thankful that you're thankful for all those who have who kind of held our hands to get to where we're at, and thank you for everyone who's listening to this episode of the Garage Grit podcast. I'm here with Kelli Weatherby of Accurate Automotive in Mesa, Arizona, and it's been a great story. I really appreciate it.